Hello, welcome to the Round Table Podcast, I guess we're calling it, where three guys talk about whatever they want.
Whenever they want.
Whenever they want.
I talk about things all the time. Whatever I want.
That's right, folks. It's the podcast where we talk about whatever we want. I thought Ben was going to go into a rap there. It really sounded rhythmic. There was a little bit of iambic pentameter in that. I talk about things whenever I want.
Yeah, it's a highly metrical. I mean, I obviously thought about those words a lot before I said them.
You're a highly metrical guy, and you think about words before you say them.
I do.
Folks, Ben was telling us right before the podcast started that he doesn't think that these three things can go together. Women voting, small government, and no-fault divorce. He was saying you can have two of them, but you can't have all three. And the reason is because if you allow for no-fault divorce, then you got a bunch of women who get divorced. And then they need somebody to take care of them. And they get the government. And so they vote for big government.
I'm sorry, I've watched a lot of Norm Macdonald in the last couple of days, and I can't mistake what I'm hearing right now.
Man, one of my well-known political rants, as anyone who follows my very active Twitter account will know.
Yes, not at all anything I was thinking about in the shower this morning. Guys, let's talk about Westerns. Jake,
Westerns. I've been on a Western kick.
You've been on a Western kick, and I want to talk about Westerns because I just watched a great Western. I think this episode's going to be an episode about Westerns, and I've got a thesis statement I'm going to make about Westerns, but I think a good way in is by talking about Jake's experience of Westerns lately. So, Jake, your Western experience of late.
Okay, so, I don't know. This just probably started, 9 or 10 months ago, actually. Because I went back to Cormac McCarthy, and I've been in and out of the Cormac McCarthy well. So I don't know. What did I read? I guess I finished
the Border Trilogy.
I finished the Border Trilogy a couple months ago. So I don't know, August, September. I think I read, what's the middle one called? The Crossing. Read The Crossing. And then I just finished Cities of the Plain. And I don't know, I've read No Country, and I watched No Country in the middle there. But then, I don't know. So I've been thinking a lot about the Western, and I think the American identity for various reasons. I don't know. Some of them just like, hey, who are we? What are we as a country? What are we trying to be? Who am I? Who are my people? You know, Westerns are great dad movies, and they're great daddy issues movies. And so I don't know. It's all that sort of stuff. Anyhow, I was trying to tick some boxes, I think, with the type of Western that I've just not seen yet. There Will Be Blood is always listed as one of the great Westerns of the last 20, 30 years. And in that sort of Cormac McCarthy, No Country for Old Men type of vein.
It's got blood right in the title.
It has blood in the title. It's got to be, So I watched There Will Be Blood. And then that just sort of was a push. And I watched Unforgiven, which was a mistake.
Really?
I hate that movie.
We'll talk about it.
Absolutely. First of all, I almost turned it off in the first couple minutes, and probably should have, but I didn't. And man, I hate that movie with undying hatred, and I hate Clint Eastwood, and I hate his guts.
More like unforgivable.
It's unforgivable.
Absolutely hate it. We'll get there.
So that made me think, man, maybe I actually really love the Coen brothers.
I like this kind of binary. If I hate
Unforgiven, maybe I love the Coen
If
brothers.
I hate Clint Eastwood, ergo, I must love. If I hate one kind of snide deconstruction, ergo, I must like a different kind of snide
exactly
deconstruction.
Right. Well, that's exactly what my mind went to, because it is the kind of thing that we hit up against a lot. When we were talking about this with The Buried Giant, and also with King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, Guy Ritchie, right? The deconstruction of King Arthur. And there's a kind of deconstruction that has respect for the thing it's deconstructing, and there's a kind of thing that is
and then there's King Arthur: Legend of the Sword,
which is great on other merits.
Yeah.
I'm still a fan.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm still a fan too, but
right. There's people that still belong to the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, people have lots of views. This is just what I'm saying.
We also talk about Lord and Miller a lot, their deconstruction of things versus their respect for the things they deconstruct.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the Coen brothers, by contrast to Clint Eastwood, at least understand what they're deconstructing and why, and seem to have some respect for it. And so, I don't know, I thought it might be time to show Brother, Where Art Thou to the family, minus some scenes and some moments. Not the whole family, the older kids. Just thought, maybe they'll appreciate some of the humor and have some fun with it. They didn't. It was all over their heads. But then turned around and watched True Grit after that, which, man, what a great movie.
It's a good movie. Minus one moment that sucks.
Debatably. You mean the ending?
No, the ending is fine. I've come around on the ending. I think most people have come around on the ending. I think the ending is disappointing when you see it in a theater and you're wanting to walk out,
still sort of
fill your
sorry.
hands, you jerks. You want that feeling, but instead you get a different feeling. But once you realize that's the kind of movie you're in for, then it's a great movie. No, the moment that I really don't like in that movie, and that is just the Coen brothers being sarcastic and snide in a way that I think is unhelpful, and it's not what happens in the novel, to my understanding, although I haven't read it. But
I know what you're going to say. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. There's this goofball, jokey moment where the Indian goes to give a speech before being hung, and they put the bag over his head.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, we don't want to hear what this guy has to say because we're...
Yeah, it's such a throwaway thing at the beginning of the movie that, it happens. It does suck.
Yeah, it's a very Coen brothers
forget
kind
about
of
it, yeah.
little sarcastic moment. But actually, my understanding in the novel, the guy gives a beautiful speech, like a speech about... And actually, I think in the John Wayne movie, the guy gives a beautiful speech about, kind of similar to what another character maybe gives. I don't know, something, one of those speeches that you hear from that time, like, I did this, I shouldn't have, now I'm being judged, don't be like me, that kind of thing. Or something, I don't know. He has like a character moment.
The first character does that.
Yeah.
The second one, screw you.
Right.
And then
the third one is another type in the novel, my understanding, but instead they do kind of like a Westerners, they were racist thing, which is dumb. But it doesn't ruin the movie. It's just a 2-second thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were saying?
I was saying I watched those movies. You wanted to talk about them.
Yes, I did. So, There Will Be Blood. Ben, have you seen There Will Be Blood?
Still haven't. I'm now interested.
For
years I wasn't, because I was like, oh, good, a dark, cynical, ugly movie where Daniel Day-Lewis is a monster.
It is all those things, but it's very Shakespearean in the sense that it's a character piece, I guess. But I don't know why that makes it Shakespearean. But I mean, what I guess I'm trying to say
it's
is
sort of Macbeth.
It's more about the monologues and the dramatic moments than it is about actual blood catharsis. For a movie with the title There Will Be Blood, it's actually fairly subdued compared to what you might expect. I'm not saying that there aren't some moments of gruesomeness and stuff like that, but it's not.
Sure.
It's actually not like to compare it to No Country for Old Men, the other movie that came out in 2007 that was kind of an instant masterpiece. That movie's much more like handcuffs ripping into the guy's flesh, arterial spray. There Will Be Blood is a character piece. Yeah. It's not primarily about violence. It arguably shouldn't actually even be called, well, you could talk about it, but it's based on a novel called Oil.
Yes, I knew that. I think there was, I also just have some distaste for PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, just knowing the kind of stuff he's made. The only movie I've maybe ever seen by that guy is, what's the Sandler? Punch Drunk Love.
Punch Drunk Love, yes.
Which I did like back in the day. So I don't know what my problem is. Just that I think the guy's gross and I don't know, whatever. I'm interested. Tell me more.
Well, Jake, what was your experience coming to it? I can talk about my experience seeing it in 2007 as a young man, which was probably different than it would be if I watched it now. But what was your experience coming to it as a 40-year-old who'd heard about it all these years?
I don't know. You tell me, man.
Well, okay, I'll tell you my experience, and then you can contrast it. So my experience was I went and saw it in a theater. I saw a bunch of movies that year. I believe that was the year of David Fincher's Zodiac and the year of No Country for Old Men and the year of There Will Be Blood. I mean, I know it was the year of There Will Be Blood because that was the year we're talking about. But that was just a really exciting, great year for cinema. People often talk about 1999 as being like the last great year of cinema. You had The Matrix. You had all kinds of stuff that isn't occurring to me. American Pie won the Oscar, which or not American Pie, that stupid movie with
Beauty.
Kevin Spacey, American Beauty, which is the dumb movie that film, modern pagan film culture doesn't embrace anymore. Everybody hates that movie. But 1999, I mean, you had The Straight Story, you had the announcement of Sofia Coppola with The Virgin Suicides. You had,
Was that Matrix?
Yeah, Matrix.
Yeah.
It was a seminal year for film. But anyway, the point is,
So, hey, you missed one of my favorite movies of all time, Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford.
yes. Another great Western.
That's
another great
amazing.
deconstruction. Yeah.
Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, you should. Although that movie has also got vulgarity and stuff. Just trigger warning.
Yeah.
People talk like they might have talked in the Old West. If that bothers you, don't watch it. Anyway.
Transformers. We didn't even talk about it. Transformers 2007.
2007.
Transformational.
It transformed our understanding of cinema.
310 to Yuma also transformed our understanding of the Western.
Michael Clayton is a pretty great movie.
Really?
I agree with you that 310 to Yuma stinks.
Yes.
Which is
National
what you were
Treasure,
trying to say.
Book of Secrets.
Anyway, that was just like, that is such a nostalgic year of cinema for me. I don't think I saw Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford or whatever the full title of that movie is in theaters. But I did see No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, and Zodiac all in theaters. And they were 3 great experiences. And they are 3 great movies. And if you haven't seen Zodiac and you're like, Nathan's willing to say he likes a serial killer movie on the podcast, it has maybe a combined 5 minutes of serial killing depicted in the movie, because they only depict the ones where people survived. Like, they depict the ones that we actually have proof of. But the actual heart of the story is about the Jake Gyllenhaal character, who was this cartoonist at the San Francisco Chronicle who got obsessed with the case, got together with the crime reporter played by Robert Downey Jr., who's just starting to pop and crackle before Iron Man is going to come 3 years later. And then you've got Mark Ruffalo playing the detective who Dirty Harry Callahan was based on. And you just have these 3 great men actors, like, and it's just one of those, I love a good process movie that just follows, like, we're going to go to the crime scene. We're going to do this. We're going to have to get together with the other county that has the other clues, and just like the bureaucratic nightmare. It's just a really entertaining movie about like men trying to work together to figure something out and failing. And it has a lot to say about, the unsolved mysteries and the unsolved mystery of evil. And I don't know. It's a terrific movie. If you can put up with, again, maybe a combined 5 minutes of, watching what the Zodiac Killer did. But I don't know, maybe close your eyes during that part or something like that. You'll definitely be able to tell when those scenes are coming. They won't be a surprise to you if you've ever seen a movie before. You'll be like, oh, the music is telling me this might be a Zodiac Killer scene. But mostly it's about the police. It's about the newspapers. It's about the media. Have you seen that movie, Ben?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah. Oh no, that's fair. The one, the 5 minutes you're talking about still lives in my brain, rent free, Nathan.
Yeah, rent free.
And I don't appreciate it. Like, that's the kind of thing that I don't know what I'd say. It is a good movie.
I mean, it's just a really absorbing story of.
Yeah.
I know this makes it sound boring, but bureaucratic process, just like we have our evidence over here, and then these guys in this county or in this state have their evidence over here, and we don't have computers. And so how do we get everything together? And there's so many places where they come so close, and you're like, we should know who the Zodiac is.
Yeah.
And then there's a wonderful moment where Gyllenhaal thinks he's figured it out, and he goes to just have a look at the man that he believes has done it. And it's a really powerful film and a great evocation of California and the time period in 19. Anyway, this is not a Zodiac podcast. The point is 2007, super fun year. Saw that in theaters. The whole audience loved it. Saw No Country for Old Men. I remember everybody grooving with it and then being like having the rug pulled out from under them the way that movie intends to do with what happens to Brolin, and that being fun. But then the seminal movie going experience maybe of my life is There Will Be Blood, because I sat in a packed theater, and it's an art movie, and it's slow and it's boring, quote unquote. Nothing happens. It's not boring. It's very intense, actually, and suspenseful. And it's got this iconic sort of avant-garde Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead soundtrack that's basically just screaming at you how intense everything is. And it was one of the first times I remember somebody really going that far. I'm sure it's, a true cinephile could tell you all the real times, but it is just like the whole time. It's kind of the non, like Hans Zimmer has since then sort of done the popified version, the mainstream version of that kind of like, I can just produce intense feelings. It's like what Nolan does. But I just remember the whole audience being enraptured by this art film, this movie without obvious popular film sort of catharsis or happiness, or, it's just a character study of this awful monster of a human being. It's not really even his downfall, because I don't know that he ever rises to the level of downfall. He's not a great man. He's just a bad man. But you just sit there and you watch this great Daniel Day-Lewis performance, and you try and piece it together. And the movie's very elliptical, as PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, can be, and in what it gives you and what it doesn't give you. And even in a given scene, it'll do these long camera setups where it's just on one character, but you hear other people talking off screen and you don't know who they are. And it takes you a minute to sort of figure it out. And I love that kind of old school formal filmmaking where we don't feel the need to cut right away. We don't feel the need to dole out the information as quickly as possible. We don't feel the need to cut to a reaction shot to show you how every character is feeling. I love Steven Spielberg, but the Steven Spielbergification of cinema is not necessarily always a good thing, where it's just like we always have to feed the audience exactly how they're supposed to feel at any given moment. And so it's just a really powerful experience. It's one of those movies, kind of like the first time you watch a Stanley Kubrick movie or something, where you're just like, I don't know where this is going, and I don't know when it's going to end. And you're just kind of with it. And I don't know, it might not have played that way at all for Jake so many years later, having been told it's a masterpiece. Like, even just going in knowing I'm watching the seminal masterpiece, There Will Be Blood, is probably a little different, or maybe a lot different than my experience of being like, it's the new Paul Thomas Anderson. It's got Day-Lewis. I'll go see it. And then, there's something kind of fun about, it's much different listening to your first Beatles album, not knowing what it is, as opposed to it's the Beatles. They're the greatest. They're the thing. And then you listen to it and you're like, okay. It's like the difference between our generation getting to discover at a video store something like Princess Bride or Shawshank Redemption, whereas now there's such established canonical classics that, like, that's what you're watching when you go into it, and it changes your expectations and you don't have the same delightful surprise. So that's my experience with There Will Be Blood. It's probably the most fun I've ever had in a theater in a snooty kind of art house way. Yeah.
Well, it's not a fun movie.
No.
But it's a movie.
Uh-huh.
And so, I don't know, for me watching it, I think it was an enjoyable experience just watching a movie and a director who respects you as an audience member enough to always let 2 + 2 hang out there.
Right.
And so, you've talked about all those aspects of it. I think probably the perspective that I brought, Daniel Day-Lewis actually kind of took me out of the character and out of the movie because of how much he was acting it.
Right. It's one of those performances that screams great performance.
That's right. And so it's just like, you're watching every aspect of this movie is like, you're watching a great performance. Look at this performance. I'm performing the crap out of this character. Do you see me performing it? And the movie is aware that it's captured a great performance and is shoving it in your face. And, this is 17 years later.
Right.
And now everybody knows Daniel Day-Lewis is the method performer.
He is the guy more than De Niro.
Yeah.
Some of those guys were for another generation. But if you want to say actor, great actor, like he's the cultural
pull,
handle.
Right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was sort of just like, well, there's Day-Lewising it up.
I'll tell you what.
He's this other character here. But what was really fun was Paul Dano's character.
I thought you were going to say that, and everybody said it was bad performance at the time, which is really interesting. I think it's aged tremendously well, actually.
It's a beautiful performance. I love it. I loved every part of it.
Well, what people always said is he's not an equal. Like imagine if
The
Day-Lewis was going head to head with, like, if it was Pacino and De Niro, that would be
Was
cool.
he supposed to be?
Well,
Because I just didn't think he was
that's
supposed
the thing.
to be.
I think he's supposed to be a sniveling little
Yeah.
manipulative worm, and I think Paul Dano plays sniveling little manipulative worms about as well as anybody.
Yeah, it was awesome. There was such a beautiful contrast, actually, in the potency of the two. And if we're talking about the making of America in the most crass way, and the perspective of the movie is you've got a soulless man who has real power, and that power is money.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a soulless man who has no power apart from his ability to manipulate the superstitious, but it's an empty power too. I think part of what you have as a perspective on America then is a real statement about the emptiness of and the stupidity of American evangelicalism.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to me, that was really clear and part of the point. If you thought the point was that American religion, American Christianity, American evangelicalism is a powerful flip side of the coin, then yeah, it's a failure, and Dano's character doesn't deliver. But I just didn't think that was what Anderson
No, I think
was
he
going
thinks
for.
religion
Certainly
is
not with Dano.
pathetic.
Yeah.
It can sort of steal the hearts of some women and children, but ultimately, monstrous capitalism is going to
bash
all,
it in and
right?
devour it all. And religion will be coming constantly to try to slip into bed with the money,
Right.
and the money will devour it and destroy it and bash it in with a tin pin.
But I think in terms of Westerns, since we're moving into a discussion of Westerns, I think most Westerns, if you had to say what the theme of a Western is, it's always on some level, no matter whether it's Roy Rogers or Clint Eastwood or whatever, it's about the interplay between civilization and lawlessness and how those two things go together. And so what you have in There Will Be Blood is you have a barbaric man, a man who is lawless, who might as well be an old school Viking patriarch or something like that. And you watch him, he literally starts the movie in the depths of the earth, like some kind of primordial man. And then he becomes this man of industry. He becomes this figure of, I hate to use Marxist terminology, but I'm sure they would, he becomes a figure of capital and all this.
The soul of America is as black as the oil beneath the Texas plains.
Right.
And that's just like the whole point of the movie. Every aspect of it, its strength, its weakness, it's pathetic and evil and empty and soulless. And that's who we really are. But the movie has actually, what I appreciated is it had a perspective. It asked the question. It tried to answer it. It was artful about it. And it is a thesis statement that's out there that you can argue against.
Right.
But it actually had a point.
Yes. Well, maybe you'd like to contrast that with Unforgiven. Sounds like, is that what we're
I
leading
hate
into?
that movie. I hate that movie with utter hatred, and I hate Clint Eastwood.
Now, just to set this up, Ben, you were surprised by that. Have you seen and liked Unforgiven?
Years ago, did I actually like it? I don't know. I think I could say I respected it for some reason. It's well crafted. It pops in certain ways. It's formally pretty masterful.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood's a good filmmaker. There's no question about that.
Yeah. As to what it means to me, it means basically nothing to me. It's a memory of a well-crafted thing that seemed important and seemed like it had something actually to say about the human condition that was true, maybe. But it's been more than 20 years. I don't have any... it's odd because I don't have any actual fondness for it, if you know what I mean. It's not like I've ever wanted to go back to it. But I would have said it was a movie that I thought was a good movie.
Well,
so that means this is making me interested to see it again and see if I think it sucks.
if people don't know, Unforgiven came out in 92, and it was Eastwood officially being accepted into the ranks of great filmmakers, into kind of the power players in Hollywood. And you might say Clint Eastwood was always a
Multiple
power
Academy
player.
Award nominations.
Right. I'd say arguably a better movie, although it has some sex stuff that's dumb. But Outlaw Josie Wales came a few years earlier, and it's just a better story. and it doesn't have the problems that Jake's about to enumerate for us, but it didn't win the awards because it's not as self-hating, so Hollywood can't get behind it. But also, I don't think they were ready to let Eastwood just put on a tie. Like, he was still looked at as the guy that made all the spaghetti westerns, the guy that made all the Dirty Harry movies, the guy that was a popular entertainer. But Unforgiven is when you do the flip to Eastwood, official prestige.
He's an artist.
Yeah, he's an artist. He's a prestige filmmaker.
And what makes him an artist is that he hates everything that he's ever done. He hates everything that, what he did was he assumed the mantle in one way or another of Gene Autry and Roy Rogers and John Wayne. And he capitalized on that for years. And yeah, he was always sideways to that and always the next escalation of that. But this movie is just like, all that sucks. There are no men. There are no heroes. There are no damsels even. It's just a big, crass, cynical deconstruction of everything that's great or even cool about Clint Eastwood. Like, there's nothing even cool about Clint Eastwood's character in the movie. I don't know. I was burning hotter against this, obviously, after I saw it, and it's been a week or two now. But
no, I think we talked about it via text, and what you were saying was just like, I mean, it does hate the Old West, and it does hate the heritage of stories and it wants to say, actually, the damsels were whores.
Right.
Actually, the heroes were callow, cowardly gunfighters who pumped lead into other men's bodies and they bled out like stuck pigs.
Yeah. And
actually, the sheriffs were psychopaths. Actually, the law was bad. Actually, the lawlessness was bad. Actually, everything was bad.
Everything was bad. And the guys who came in to defend the whores were just guys who wanted some money and didn't have any souls, and who cares if they killed somebody? And it's just like, and the whores just wanted vengeance. Even the bad guy who cuts up the prostitute at the beginning of the movie, like, he pays them off, he goes out of his way, they do all the things, they jump through all the hoops, they bring extra, and it's just like, well, the whores aren't satisfied. They want him dead.
Right.
And so they found some guys who are just like looking for an excuse to kill people and maybe make a little money in the process, just to see what it's like, or to see if they still have it in them. And it's like, well, one of them's just a psychopath who gets lucky. And it's just like, okay, well, like, and then you have two at the heart of the story. You have the storyteller, your dime novelist, who's going around looking for these stories. And like,
very fun performance by Richard Harris.
Well, he's not the novelist. He's the
English Shakespeare.
Bob.
Yeah. He's English Bob. You're right.
Yeah, he's English Bob. But Richard Harris is great. But then you have the novelist who's sort of following him around, and it's like, no, actually, all these guys are just like stupid, evil drunks who get lucky, and the lucky guys stand. And then all our stories are just these guys looking to make money off of them, importing a sort of nobility or heroism or whatever mythos into these just callow, drunken losers, right. Psychopaths. And so you see him jump from one person to the next, making up virtue where there's no virtue, making up, a story where there's no story. And it's just like, no, man, these are all just drunks shooting each other up. And the lucky one who's left standing gets to be the hero and gets to have all this sort of nobility and heroism, and he saves the damsel, and he's, takes out 6 guys and whatever. But it's like, no, somebody's gun jams and this happens and it's a bloody mess. And, and one guy's a coward who can't get his gun off, and the other guy shoots one guy and then has an emotional breakdown and jumps on his horse and runs away. And it's like, yeah, there's nothing here. There is nothing here. It's just all empty and stupid. And this is the empty, stupid thing that we celebrate and tell stories about and pretend that there's virtue in it. And there's none. There is no heroism. There's no virtue. There's nothing. Nothing built the West. The West just sort of happened. Nothing. There is no real virtue in the South or in the West or in America. It's just...
Or in any of our any of our stories, any of the myths we tell.
It's just the
lies
ourselves. That we tell to make ourselves feel better about how much we all suck. And the only person who's able to bring any virtue to anybody is the dead wife of Clint Eastwood, who kept him from being a murderous drunk for a couple years while she was alive. But then as soon as she's dead, and he's realizes it's hard to make an honest living and to raise his stupid pigs. He leaves his 10-year-old son in charge of his 8-year-old daughter and goes off to go kill some people.
All of which I might be able to stomach, although I would disagree with its premises. But I also disagree with the premises of There Will Be Blood and had a fantastic time with it. All of which I might be able to stomach if Clint Eastwood had the courage of his convictions. But the thing about it that is so cowardly, dude, you made so much money. You have so many beach houses because you played a myth. You played the man with no name. Like yes, though the spaghetti westerns in and of themselves are pretty cynical about the Old West and pretty like everything was terrible, but they are playing to myth making in a way that people love. And so for this movie to say, actually, it was all dumb, it just feels like, wow, Clint, you made all your money and now you're going to tell us we were stupid for giving it to you. But even there, if he wanted
your
to,
award,
if he wanted to actually, what's that?
But here's your award. The Academy now accepts you.
Yeah. Well, even there, if he was like, I'm sorry, I feel so bad that I made those violent movies and I want to show you exactly. And I'm just like, that's terrible. But he can't do that. And so he actually has his cake and eats it too. He has a scene of blood catharsis at the end where William Money goes and blows away all the bad guys. And, it's done as a dramatic sort of sad whatever, but I also see it posted by mouth breathers on the internet all the time as a cool revenge scene. For whatever reason, and I log on Facebook maybe twice a year, but anytime I do, it's like I followed old cinema accounts or whatever, and it's like, here's a cool scene of bullies in a school being jerks, and then somebody kung fu's them. People love to share those one person, people that we all hate are being dumb, and then an awesome person puts them in a place kind of scenes. Well, this one is in that rotation as like a great Clint Eastwood blows away the bad guys scenes. And everybody remembers the Gene Hackman's villain saying, I don't deserve this. And Clint Eastwood saying, desert's got nothing to do with it, before he puts a couple pieces of lead in him. And it's like, you needed to really, now maybe it's not possible. Francois Truffaut, the great French filmmaker, says you can't make an anti-war movie because war is inherently exciting to watch on screen. And so it's impossible, no matter how hard you try, to make an actual anti-war movie. But I don't actually think that that's true. I think you could do that scene in such a way that it isn't cathartic, in such a way that it's like, actually, none of this mattered. And really, we are sticking to the fact that there was nothing glorious about any of this. But it's not done that way. It's done as your typical violent Clint Eastwood ending set piece.
Where he walks away.
And it's really disingenuous. It's just really unfair to make a whole movie about how there was no Clint Eastwood and then to still
get your Clint Eastwood.
And
it's just enough Clint Eastwood at the end that, an idiot who comes to see the Clint Eastwood movie doesn't know, feels bad for the first 85 minutes of the movie, or however long the movie is, for reasons he can't explain. And then in the last 5 minutes, Clint Eastwood blows everybody away. And he's like, okay, I got what I paid for and I feel okay. And he doesn't know that the movie hates him, doesn't know that the movie hates his guts, doesn't know the movie hates him for wanting to come see a Clint Eastwood movie in the first place. Doesn't realize that movie is like, hey, idiot, you thought you liked Clint Eastwood movies. You thought you liked Westerns. You're stupid, you're wrong, and you're an idiot. Oh yeah, by the way, here's 2 minutes of Clint Eastwood blowing everybody's brains out. Thanks for your money. We're going to win awards now.
And it's done artfully enough that people like the idiots are like, that was a more serious and sober, kind of artful, cool Clint Eastwood action shoot 'em up. It's like my friend who watched Taxi Driver and was like, what a great action movie. It's like, I think you missed the point, dude. I agree with you, Ben, actually, that I saw it 25 years ago. And I was like, that was cool. But what's Jake's describing, and as I remember it, I'm like, yeah, I think that actually probably is how I would feel if I watched it.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. I'm interested. I mean, it rings true, but I'm still like, maybe I should see it again.
Well,
I don't know that I want to.
I think it plays so much into the deconstruction of America over the last 30 years. That's part of what I'm angry about.
Actually,
Yeah.
In the rear view.
In the rear view. Like in 1992.
Yeah.
In 1992, in context, who cares?
It was almost like in 1992, you could just take it as, hey, here's my way of being honest is to just offer another perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the only one, not to reframe everything even, but just to say, what about this?
It could at least plausibly play because we all we love America, we love the Old West, we love John Wayne movies. Okay, here's another perspective. Maybe it was more like, here's a corrective.
I think that's just how it felt. It didn't feel like,
but now
I've taken everything,
But now it feels like, no, these guys won.
This was part of a trajectory that led to...
This was part of a trajectory. This was it was almost like it's part of a stupid plan.
Right.
Like, and that's why the Academy awarded it so much. It's just like, no, this is the direction we're moving. And now once we tear down Clint Eastwood and get him to sell out, it's just like, it's all part of getting us to where we are today. And I just hate it. I hate it all. I hate them all for it. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that 25 years ago, I feel as bad about it as I do now. I don't think that.
No.
I don't
think you do.
But now having the perspective of where we're at and where our art's gone.
Well, around the same time, Dances with Wolves is coming out, which I don't think anyone in this room is particularly loves. And I don't know that anyone outside of your dad, one's dad actually loves that movie anymore. It hasn't really held up in the discourse, but it's kind of a similar thing where it's like, hey, when you watch it, then you're like, oh, okay, I guess the Indians and cowboys and Indians were people too. Okay, good point. But you watch it now. Well, you can't watch it now actually, because we've gone so far beyond that where actually the amount of people won't accept the small level of hagiography about the Indians in Dances with Wolves now. They're offended.
It's too patronizing.
Yeah, it's too patronizing. Yeah, exactly. And we're making them into the other. We're still othering them, and we're still this and we're still that. And it's like we've actually. But let's contrast that with True Grit by the Coen brothers, the movie that you watched partially as a palate cleanser, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was such a fantastic palate cleanser. I loved it so much more than I did the first time I saw it. I think it was the second time. I don't think, maybe I've seen it 3 times.
I think I've seen it 3 times.
Maybe 3 times
in theaters,
but at least twice I've seen it now. I enjoyed it the first time. I had fun with it the first time. I thought it was good the first time, but the first time, I was only watching it with reference to the John Wayne version, and I was not watching it with reference to the Western,
right?
And man, I loved that movie. Everything about it was.
Well, it's actually a good example of a movie that's pretty unromantic about the Old West, and yet tremendously romantic about the Old West.
Yeah,
both at the same time. And it's, one of the reasons that people have problems with the movie. The thing that everybody thought I was going to say when I said I have a problem with the movie is the ending, which is very unromantic, like a stick in your eye if you wanted a nice romantic ending, especially if you remember the John Wayne movie where he's like, come and see an old fat man. And she's like, yay. And then the music swells and that's the end of the movie. But the Coens wanted to do the movie so that they could adapt the last chapter of the novel, which is old, single, lonely Maddie Ross going to see her old friend who's dead.
Yep.
time
just gets away from us. Did you like that movie? Do you like that movie, Ben?
Yes. No. I liked it a lot when I saw it. I remember talking with a good friend of mine at the time who was not a big fan because he felt the same way. I mean, a little bit similarly to the way you felt about Unforgiven, was like, yeah, this movie is just a cynical deconstruction of masculinity that reduces its idiot would-be heroes that you think you're coming to see, oh, they're the hero, that kind of thing, to shooting cornbread in an effort to one up each other, and that's mainly what this movie is. So I don't like it. So I think that perspective made some sense to me. I don't know. I haven't seen it since then.
I think that's true. I think that the Coen brothers do want to question the heroism of John Wayne and the John Wayne of it all. But at the end of the day, you know what happens? Jeff Bridges runs that horse into the ground and then carries Maddie Ross the rest of the way and nearly dies in the process and saves her life because he's still a freaking hero.
Right.
Well,
and so is Matt Damon's character.
And Matt Damon's character, LaBeef, shows up and pulls the shot off.
And he's an idiot, but
he's
an idiot,
but he's still a lovable hero.
Right.
Like, he's still a dude. Like, he's still a man.
Yeah.
He's still a Texas Ranger. He's still a guy that you can depend on. And there is a principle there
Uh-huh.
of masculinity and heroism and sacrifice that's even beneath the buffoonishness and the drunkenness and everything else that says there has to be something here that built this world. There has to be something here that built the America that you love or that you think you love. There has to be something here behind the manners and the idea and the idealism. These stories didn't just pop out of nowhere. Like, and okay, so it's over romanticized and idealized and all that sort of thing, but there has to be something underneath all of it that's real. And you have to, if you want to tear it down and question it and interrogate it, you still have to give the devil his due. And that's what.
Well, they give us Jeff Bridges with the reins in his mouth.
Yeah,
guns
fill your
a-blazing,
hands.
fill your hands.
That scene's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's
Really
the full,
amazing.
it's everything that everybody remembers from the John Wayne thing, and they don't subvert it.
And the villains are still villains.
And the villains are scary.
Yeah.
The heroes arenn't villains.
Right.
They may be buffoons sometimes, but
Yeah,
they're not
there is a
villains.
clear difference between Matty Ross and between Josh Brolin and Barry Pepper and those other characters. Whatever Ned Pepper, whatever his name is.
Barry Pepper. Barry Pepper's the actor. Is it actually Ned Pepper? Is his character?
Yeah,
That's funny.
Lucky Ned Pepper.
Yeah, Barry
that's his
Pepper
real
plays
last
Lucky
name.
Ned Pepper. The whole sort of accusation of the Coen brothers since the 1980s, since their earliest movies, since Raising Arizona and all that, is they don't like their characters and they're just making fun of them. That's what people always say. Like, you can't. And Jake just said his kids did not understand Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And one of the reasons they didn't understand it is because it's not so much, I don't think about the Americana or anything. It's about calibrating with their finely tuned sense of sarcastic, self-hating Midwestern irony. They're Minnesotan boys who don't like themselves very much. They're Jewish, Imagine being two sort of sophisticated Jewish boys in Minnesota, in the 1960s or 70s or whenever they grew up. And so it's always hard to calibrate with them, at least until you've seen a number of their movies. But I think the secret to the Coen brothers, who I kind of love, I will admit, although they can be vulgar and violent and all that, I think that they always love their characters. I think that they...
Even the grotesques feel
Right.
lovable. Even in the grotesques in No Country for Old Men feel kind of lovable in their own way. Like...
Well, why do you give Anton Chigurh that ridiculous haircut? It is like, we're all pathetic. The greatest, symbol of vengeance and fate and is still, there is something in their irony that I think shows a love for the human condition. I think they love those three guys in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
As stupid as they are. And I think that they have fun making their characters suffer. I think they think it's funny. They have a sick sense of humor and a sort of self-hatred and whatever. But I think at the end of the day, when you get down to it, they almost always actually have great affection for
Well, that's very
for their
much
characters.
that's very much what I felt in True Grit on the second viewing, and what I love so much about it as such a stark contrast to Unforgiven.
right.
Just like I felt loved,
Right.
actually. I felt validated, even if they're going to, it's perfectly fine to say, hey, your heroes actually kind of suck. We all actually kind of suck. And you really want to take your heroes up a level and diminish the suck. And we're just not going to let you get away with that. We're going to maybe bend it back the other direction. But we're not going to take away what's heroic about them.
Right. Or
In
what's
fact,
truly villainous and terrible about them.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, like that's David. That's that's all my heroes actually. Like that's the Bible does that.
Right.
And the Bible's not cynical or snide about it, but there's at least something more real and true and sweet and good and wholesome in how the Coen brothers do it than what you see in so many other places. And man, I know like Unforgiven is like this horrible black backdrop that makes any
tiny pinprick of light.
Off-white,
Right.
semi-white, yellow. You could throw something horrible and yellow and gross on there and it's going to look like a shimmering diamond. But man,
The Coen brothers are adolescent, they're very like yeah, dude, we just cut off that guy's fingers. You know,
Right.
we're always going to go a little farther than you actually think we should. And we're always going to shock you. And some of that's just showmanship. Some of that's a way to make money. Some of there's lots that's dumb about them. Don't get me wrong. And there's some things that are dumb about True Grit, but I think basically you're right. I think basically it's a movie that loves the Old West, loves language.
Oh man, they do love language.
Loves the novel, obviously loves the novel and wants to do it justice. And you just have it's so interesting to compare their sensibilities to the John Wayne movie, because I remember watching that John Wayne movie and enjoying it, but I remember hating Maddie Ross.
Yeah. And then there's Haley Steinfeld, who is like perfection. She's a genius. She's just like, everything about her is perfect. Her performance is perfect. What they got out of her at however old she was amazing.
Yeah,
like,
12, I think. I mean, it's an amazing performance.
It's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, it's really like they couldn't have done the movie if they didn't find her. And it's so finely calibrated because this girl is annoying. But, you know, it's like in the John Wayne movie when the Matt Damon equivalent starts spanking her, you're like, cool.
Thank you.
Please don't. And then you're mad at John Wayne for stopping him. But in this version, maybe you sympathize with Matt Damon a little bit, but also you want it to stop. It's like you actually feel everything for everybody all at once. You're like, yes, girl, you need to get across that river and join them. And yes, Matt Damon, she's annoying and needs to just go back to the town. And yes, Jeff Bridges, you're going to intervene. It's like, again, I think the Coen brothers actually love their characters, and you're supposed to sort of feel everything at once. And it's wonderful. So, yeah, that's a good movie. I mean, the other thing that I've been thinking about since we had this conversation about Unforgiven a couple of weeks ago is I've been thinking about whether there is such a thing as a straight Western, not some sort of metatextual reaction to the idea of the West, to the idea of America, to the idea of masculinity, like whether it actually exists. Like,
Probably not.
well, that's what I'm like, what would I say is actually a straight Western? Because you think about the classics, you think about The Searchers, and it's like, The Searchers, the first time that we had a hero who was morally compromised, Ethan Edward, you know, you think about all the Westerns, and then everybody says, well, Roy Rogers. And it's like, okay, have you actually seen a Roy Rogers movie? I haven't seen a Roy Rogers
The answer is
movie.
no.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever actually seen one.
No.
So what I thought I'd do very quickly is actually take us through every Western that Nathan Alberson has seen. I've got the list pulled up on Letterboxd right now, and we'll see if we can find one that we can identify as.
Maybe after you're done, we could talk for just a second about the assassination
Yeah.
of Jesse James.
Well, I think we'll get to it because I'm going to list it
Cool.
here. So the first Western, I'm going in chronological order of release. First Western I've seen, The Great Train Robbery. You guys remember this movie from
Wait,
1903?
Michael Crichton's? The
No,
Great Train-
the one from 1903. You always see
1903.
you always see clips of it. It's like 5 minutes long, and it involves a train pulling into a station, and then some hooligans like robbing a bank or something.
I haven't seen
It's like one of the first works of cinema ever. You can watch it. It's 12 minutes long.
Probably better than the Michael Crichton movie.
Yeah. But okay, so that maybe you could argue that's a straight Western because it's just a silent movie where bandits rob people. But the very next movie chronologically that I've seen is an Eastern Westerner, which is a Harold Lloyd movie from 1920s. And the joke of that movie is Harold Lloyd, he's going to the Old West. So I'm going to say we're already spoofing. It's already like a trope by the 1920s that we're spoofing. And then the next one is The Pale Face, which is a Buster Keaton movie. And the joke of that movie is, Buster Keaton, what a moron. He's going to the Old West. And then we've got The Frozen North. Oh, it's Buster Keaton again. So I haven't found. Then we've got The Pilgrim. Now that is a little different. That's a Charlie Chaplin movie. And the joke of that is Charlie Chaplin, he goes to the Old West. He subverts all the tropes. Then we've got Go West. That's a Buster Keaton movie. So, all right. Then I've got next chronologically, Whoops, I'm an Indian, a Three Stooges film where, wouldn't you know it, Curly, Larry, and Moe, they go to the Old West and subvert the tropes. Then I've got Goofs and Saddles. That's a Three Stooges movie. Then the next movie that I have seen, and I dare say I've seen more Westerns than most of the people that have been listening to this podcast, Stagecoach. Now, we've all
Yeah.
watched Stagecoach. Would we say that is a straight Western?
No, but why?
I mean, it's
Well,
nuanced.
Wayne himself he's a prisoner, right? That's how it starts.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Remind me, why is he locked up in the first place?
He took revenge on the guys that killed his dad or something like that. He's the Ringo Kid.
Yeah.
He broke the law, but in some way that we as the audience are supposed to sympathize with. And then he falls in love with the prostitute, although I don't think the movie calls her that.
But it's certainly intimated.
Right. And it's a very sweet romance between these two people that are
The murderer and the prostitute.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
They're finding redemption out there in the plains.
can John Wayne settle down? Can he? And then at the end, the guys decide to subvert law and order and let him cross the border.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like it's already morally compromised. It's already interrogating law and order. Like, it's not just like the thing people always say about Roy Rogers and stuff, you know? I mean, it's not white hats, black hats. It's like, this is complicated. This is interesting.
Yep.
This is, I think one of the things I want to prove is that Unforgiven saying, actually, the Old West, there was moral complication. Like, that was just like such an unbrave, lame.
Yeah.
And even True Grit, the Coen brothers movie, being like, actually, they cut off people's fingers. It's like, guys, the Westerns have mostly been morality plays. It's mostly been where we go to interrogate our ideas about ourselves as a people and as individuals and as Americans. Like, it's actually never simplistic, or rarely, at least in the ones that have sort of lasted. All right, we got Three Stooges. Yes, we have no Bonanza. You guys get the pun there. Then in 1939, we've got Destry Rides Again. You guys ever seen Destry Rides Again?
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
I would really recommend it, especially if you're a Jimmy Stewart fan.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
Those are novel series too, right? Destry books.
I think so. I mean, the thing about Destry Rides Again, it might actually even be kind of a spoof, although it's not a straight comedy, but it's like Destry was the great gunfighter and Jimmy Stewart is his son. And so everybody expects Jimmy Stewart to come in and clean up this wild, lawless town, but he refuses to wear guns. He doesn't now he can use them. He's one of these kinds of Rurouni Kenshin type characters. Like, he knows how to use a gun, but he used it once in a way that made him feel bad. And so he's not going to wear his guns until the end of the movie, when of course he is going to wear his guns and shoot the crap out of
Clean the town up after all.
But this movie, I mean, people like to, a modern critic would say it's interrogating ideas of masculinity. And I would agree. It is. Jimmy Stewart's like this guy who, he doesn't want to start fights. He doesn't want to be like a brash Western kind. He doesn't want to be the character that his dad was thought of as. He wants to play it cool. He's willing to accept an insult without starting a gunfight. Like, the whole movie is, everyone's like, you got to put on your guns and take care of things. And he's like, well, I just, Bill's money and John's money.
Love it.
It's a great movie. It's really fun. I recommend it. But it's definitely an interrogation of what makes a Western guy. And then we've got My Little Chickadee, which is W.C. Fields, another spoof. Then we have the Marx Brothers in Go West. I'm going to say that's a spoof.
I've never seen that one.
That's not good. The joke is that they're the Marx Brothers and they go west.
Oh, man.
Then we have They Died with Their Boots On, which is an Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn plays General Custer, which that's interesting because I suppose you could say it's a straight Western, but it's really a movie about how awesome General Custer was, which even then was like quite a statement, I mean, it's like, you can find Westerns that are like pro-propaganda for, you can find Westerns that are like interrogating everything and saying, actually, the right-wing, quote-unquote, ideal of the Old West is correct, and General Custer was great, and everything that happened to him was awesome and sympathetic, and those Indians were bad. You can find that kind of Western. I still don't know that we could say that's a thing that exists not in reference to other things. It's still like interrogating and answering and that kind of thing. Then we've got the Three Stooges and Cactus Makes Perfect. Is that a pun?
Practice.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
Then we have the Three Stooges and Phony Express.
Pony would be what it's going for.
Yeah. Then we have the Three Troubledoors.
Troubadours.
Yeah. Then we have
I'm really good at this game.
My
You
Darling
are.
Clementine. You guys ever see Henry Fonda,
No.
John Ford?
Yeah.
Nope.
My Darling.
It's been a while, but I've seen it.
It's
Any good?
Yeah, it's fine. It's his Wyatt Earp movie. I don't really like it. Do you like that one, Jake?
I have no desire to watch it again.
There's no reason to watch it. There's so many Wyatt Earp movies in a world with
Yeah.
Tombstone. There's just no reason to watch a different one.
Besides Tombstone, yeah.
So if you want to see his kind of boring John Ford, I don't know. I guess we could say that's a straight Western. I mean, I don't know. Small town values.
There's no such thing as a straight Western with Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, it's
The
Wyatt
whole
Earp.
point of Wyatt Earp is that he's complicated.
They kill his brother, and so he's like, I should become sheriff so I can take revenge.
So I
and-
have an excuse. So I have the protection of the law to just go massacre the crap out of the cowboys. That's the whole Wyatt Earp story.
Right. Then we have the Three Stooges and Out West. I don't even know. That's not a pun, I don't think. We've got John Wayne and Fort Apache. Is that a straight Western? Have you guys seen that one?
No, I haven't seen it.
I don't remember that one very well, so maybe that's a straight Western. Then we've got Bugs Bunny Rides Again. Not a straight Western. The joke of that is that Bugs Bunny goes to the West and does Bugs Bunny stuff.
What?
What?
It's a pretty good joke.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Right up there with the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin. And then we've got Red River. Have you guys ever seen Red River? Famous John Wayne movie.
I'm sure I've seen that
No.
movie, and I definitely know the scene, but I cannot actually recall sitting down to watch it. It's just one of those, like, there's so many John Wayne movies.
They all
that
kind of blend together.
They blend
yeah.
together, and it's like, if you're always watching John Wayne, are you ever watching John Wayne?
Right, exactly. Yep. Some of us had childhoods like this.
Yeah.
Red River is a movie where John Wayne plays a almost villain, a Shakespearean figure, a patriarch of this cattle driving family who drives some of his sons to suicide, and like it's very subversive and then it sort of ties it all up with actually John Wayne's great and we love each other, but as they were wont to do at the time. But the movie itself, while you're in the middle of it, does not feel like a straight Western at all. She Wore a Yellow Ribbon is another classic
yeah.
Calvary John Ford movie. Don't really remember it.
Never
Cavalry.
seen it. Cavalry.
We call it.
Yeah. Which one's the place where Jesus died, and
Calvary.
Cavalry.
and which one's
The cavalry.
The cavalry.
That's
Yeah.
the
So
horses.
it's not the cavalry has arrived.
No,
No.
it's not.
I mess that up on a daily basis. It lives rent free in my head. Then we have Rio Grande, another John Wayne. Then we have High Noon, which is super subversive. I don't know if you guys have seen them.
Yeah, I have. It's
No,
been a long time. It's
I
Gary
haven't seen it.
Cooper and
Yeah, and it's like
I should see it sometime.
it's good. It's worth seeing.
I liked it when I saw it, but I have a distaste for it for some reason, and I do not want to go back to it.
It's super moralistic and super lefty, kind of like it's all a parable for the House of Un-America committee, Joe McCarthyism stuff. It's like the bad guys are coming to town and Gary Cooper wants to stand up to him, and he just goes from person to person saying, will you strap on a gun and help me? And doggone it, nobody wants to help him. Nobody. And he has
But
to
he's principled, so he's going to stand out there against them all by himself at high noon.
right. And then Grace Kelly, his beautiful young bride, eventually shoots one of them or something, just to, that's like the woman has it. It's one of my favorite cliches where the woman shoots the bad guy and then she's trembling with the gun in her hand and the hero goes and takes it out of her hand. Always a good moment, but certainly
Nobody
not.
plays self-righteous more than, or better or worse than Gary Cooper.
And
Not
he's
even
the
Jimmy
worst.
Stewart.
I
And he really is gross about it.
I hate.
I just don't know that I've seen him in anything.
Yankee Doodle Dandy?
Haven't
No,
seen
Yankee
it.
Doodle Dandy is not what you're thinking of. Yankee Doodle
Oh,
Dandy
no,
is
no,
great.
no. Shoot. What did I...
People should see Yankee Doodle Dandy. That's
Yankee
Jimmy
Doodle
Cagney
Dandy's
playing
great.
George M. Cohen.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great.
no. What I meant was...
Sergeant York is what
Sergeant
you meant.
York. That's exactly what I
Sergeant York is probably his best corny Americana.
Yes. I've only seen bits of it, though. I've never
Yeah.
seen the whole thing.
It's
gotta
pretty.
wet your sights, man. You know how you shoot the geese? You shoot them from the back, the V, and then they'll flutter a little bit, but they won't know. You take out the one in front, and then you go and you just work out the German trenches that way.
Yeah, he uses his cornbone country wisdom to kill.
He's got to go and read the Bible and the Constitution though before he decides he's going to go and kill anybody, because he's a moral, conscientious objector.
That sounds
Being
good.
a good Christian man.
It is a fun
very
movie.
straightforward.
I mean, especially if you understand it in the context of it being a literal recruitment tool during a literal world war. It's kind of fun.
To deal with all the people who have literal conscientious objections to going and killing the Nazis.
Right. So we're into the 1950s now. We're into the era of the psychological Western, the post-Western era. Like everything's questioning the Western officially now. So we've got Shane, which is a great movie, very much that.
I don't know that I've seen that one.
I think I haven't.
I feel like I haven't seen that one. I wouldn't be surprised to sit down and watch it and be like, oh yeah.
Well, I'll tell you the next one, which you have seen, I know you've seen, even if you don't know that you've seen it, which is John Wayne's Hondo.
Oh yeah, I have seen it.
This is the one where this is the famous moment that ruined a generation of young men, where John Wayne throws the little boy into the little boy's like, I can't swim. How do I learn? And John Wayne's like, well, and then he throws the kid into the water.
Yep.
And it's hilarious. And then now people write think pieces about how their dad did that and it like ruined their childhood and all this kind of stuff. And we probably did an episode of Sound of Sanity, or at least I know we've talked about it before. So that's Hondo. I guess you could say it's a straight Western, but it's also like a John Wayne masculinity parable and has some interesting things to say about the Indians. So we've got two potential straight Westerns, I guess, both John Wayne movies. Next, we've got Droopy's Drag Along Droopy, I should say. This is what happens in this movie is Droopy the dog from the Looney Tunes goes to the West and he has adventures being Droopy the dog. So I don't know. Do you guys feel like that's a straight Western?
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely.
All right. So we've got three.
We got one, yeah. One for sure and two maybes.
Next, we've got Oklahoma, the Rodgers and Hammerstein movie.
Never seen.
All about doing a show trial after you've murdered somebody who's lusting after your woman, and then all singing a cheerful song. Incredibly subversive. Rodgers and Hammerstein, sex maniacs. Just watch Sound of Music if you don't believe me. I'm serious. That's really not. That's really not a joke.
Not sarcastic.
Just watch the story of a beautiful 20-year-old governess attracting some old captain who really should be marrying a stodgy old baroness. But,
yeah.
Old Yeller is on this list as a Western. I don't know. I'm not going to count that one.
I mean, they even intimate.
Sound of Music?
Well, yeah. I mean, they intimate a lot about her past.
About Maria's past. Yeah. Listen.
It's all there if you are actually paying attention.
Roger Hammerstein.
It's actually pretty rough.
Either Rodgers or Hammerstein said every one of our plays about sex. I mean, that's a quote. And it's true of Oklahoma. It's certainly true of Sound of Music. And it's what made them so darn popular, for crying out loud. Open your eyes, people. Rio Bravo, one of the great John Wayne movies. This is a subversive movie. This was specifically made as an anti-High Noon because the whole point is the bad guys are coming. And so John Wayne goes and asks his friends for help, and doggone it, if the whole lovable town doesn't rally around him and send those bad guys running, it's just like super John Wayne pitting his view of humanity and of America and of people against Gary Cooper's left-wing view. And next we have The Magnificent Seven in 1960. I just watched this for the first time. Have you guys ever seen The Magnificent Seven?
I have seen it before.
I think I've seen you're talking the Yul Brynner.
Yeah, the Yul Brynner one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
I think I saw it as a kid. You didn't like it that much.
Well, yeah, I think the Magnificent Seven, The Dirty Dozen, those types of movies sort of.
The Great Escape is another one.
The Great Escape. They sort of run together, and they've got a little bit of ugliness about them and about their characters that as a kid, it's just like a little too much, a little too far.
Well, it's like the spaghetti westerns. They might be too far, but at least they sort of achieve a full-blown cartoon sort of grandiosity to them.
Yeah.
But the Magnificent Seven is kind of in a weird liminal space where it's just a little bit dirty, just a little bit provocative, and you don't really know what to do with that.
I liked Seven Samurai was a lot more fun.
Seven Samurai is a better movie. I mean, Seven Samurai is a masterpiece of world cinema. Magnificent Seven is just fun. I had fun with it watching it now, mostly for the performances of Brenner and Steve McQueen's fun. And
you've got what's his face too.
You've got Charles Bronson.
His voice,
and he's pretty great. And he's got a great scene. One of those they don't make them like they used to scenes where the Mexican boy is like, "Our fathers will not fight; they are cowards." And then he spanks the kid, and then he says, "Don't you dare call your father a coward again. The only coward is me. The only thing I know how to do is shoot a gun." But your father, he takes responsibility for you every day. He works hard in the
I want to see
fields.
this movie.
It's wonderful.
That's really sweet.
It's really sweet, actually. And Bronson has this whole corny subplot with these lovable kids. Next, we have, okay, but Magnificent Seven, not a straight Western. As you guys said, kind of dirty feeling and very like, what is it to be a gunfighter? And, you know.
What is, we know fear, senor. That's what I remember from that movie.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh, dear.
Nowhere near as subversive or interesting as Seven Samurai, but still in its own way. Certainly not a straight Western. Next, we've got John Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is all about the fact that John Wayne shot Liberty Valance, spoiler alert, but he let everybody think that Jimmy Stewart did it, and they did, and you know,
Print the legend.
Print the legend. It's where that quote comes from.
Still haven't seen that. I don't know why not. I really want to see
you
it.
have to see that one.
It's
I
pretty
love
great.
Jimmy Stewart. I don't know what my problem is. Why
It's a
haven't I
pretty
gone and seen all those
seminal,
movies?
like, even if you just...
Yeah.
I mean, if you love Jimmy Stewart, I'd say see this one and see Destry. They're both great.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we're into the 60s. So now we're into some silliness. HUD with Paul Newman is on my list. I know that one's a subversive Paul Newman kind of Western, but I really don't remember it very well. It's been a long time. Then we have McClintock, which I guess you could argue isn't subversive in that it's very right wing, but I think
come on.
It's subversively right wing.
It's just like, screw you. Come watch John Wayne beat the crap out of people and spank the lady.
It is actually a super subversive movie, and it knows exactly what it's doing. I mean, that's the thing. Humorless scolds watch the movie now, and they're like, I can't believe they genuinely thought that we should punch everyone and spank women. And it's like,
and then there are other people who are like, these are the good old days.
Right. But neither one of them
Remember when we could punch anybody we wanted and spank the ladies?
Right. And it's like, no, John Wayne was being provocative. He was being funny. He knew he was being funny.
And part of what he was doing, he definitely knew he was being funny. And I think whether he knew it or not, he's rubbing everybody's face in the fact that actually we all just love this sort of thing.
Yeah,
the ladies love this sort of thing.
Well, and I think John Wayne, much of his later career, is responding to people like Clint Eastwood and the Magnificent Seven and all these psychological Westerns. And he's saying, come on, you guys. What you like is see me play a manly character who takes care of business, who doesn't take anything from anybody, who tames all the women folk. And, you know,
I tame the shrews, best the boys. This is all... Men want to be me, women want to be with me. And if you don't understand the beauty of that, then I don't think you actually understand yourself for all your psychological dramas and your questioning of characters and all that sort of thing. There's a reason why my movies actually make money. It's because they actually understand people, idiots.
Well, and McClintock was a movie that was made. So John Wayne made his Alamo movie, which is an interesting movie, but it failed. It didn't make money because it was sort of questioning the Alamo. You know, it's like more interesting and people didn't want that. So John Wayne is like, I really need a hit. How do I manufacture a surefire hit? And fascinatingly, his answer was the broadest, goofiest comedy. We're going to put the image of me spanking Maureen O'Hara on the poster. And it's going to be like the taming of the shrew in the way. Like, you guys remember The Quiet Man? Well, it's like that.
What if it was that, but wasn't even trying to be a movie. It was just trying to be fun.
Yeah, like what if it was the Quiet Man minus all that boring quality stuff? And it's
what if we didn't try to make a movie? We weren't trying to make a film. We just tried to make a good time at the movies.
And it's one thing for John Wayne to think that. It's another thing for him to be absolutely right and for it to be one of the biggest money makers of 1963. Like, people ate that stuff up. They loved it.
It is
so
like
much.
If you were to go and just ask some random person on the street what their favorite John Wayne movie is, if they are into film, they might say The Quiet Man. But if this is just your average Joe, like McClintock's probably the one that they're going to pull.
Right.
I just can't imagine.
If they're a cineast, then perhaps they'll say, The Searchers or something like that.
Yeah, they'll say The Searchers or The Quiet Man.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's just going to be like, well, McClintock or Rio Bravo, obviously.
Well, and honestly, if
you're just going to sit and watch a John Wayne movie for fun,
yeah, it would be McClintock or one of those because they're just fun. They're stupid. It's stupid. I mean, but you sometimes you're laughing with it, sometimes you're laughing at it, but who cares? You're laughing either way.
Right.
Like,
Hey guys, remember when movies could just be fun?
right. Yeah. Well, and I'm waiting for the day for somebody to figure out how to do that. I'm like, nobody makes garbage for us anymore. You know, they make garbage for the other
There's
side.
one man.
Who's that?
The hero we don't deserve, but the hero we need. Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. Well, yeah, Tom Cruise is the closest, and
he's the one who makes movies.
And
They're a fun time at the movies.
Just kind of fun, and he pays lip service to feminism, but he still finds a way to kind of slot the woman into the woman role, even if it's Rebecca Ferguson doing kicks and stuff. It's interesting. So 1963, McClintock makes all the money, is incredibly subversive in its way, and then we're into the spaghetti westerns. 1964 is A Fistful of Dollars, which is clearly the Italians saying,
give me a fistful of dollars to
right. We take all your tropes. We strip out all these sort of, I don't do it in an Italian accent, I guess, but you strip out like anything nice and anything boring and anything kind of relational. And it's just like, let's just do the good parts. Let's just do the violence. Let's just do the one-liners. Let's be
sure that we get beautiful shots of all this bizarre American landscaping. Landscaping?
Yep.
Landscaping. We mow the lawns. It's beautiful.
Geography. How about that? Geography.
But they weren't filmed in America, right?
Well, so Once Upon a Time in the West was later on, but the Dollars trilogy is in Spain.
So Once Upon a Time in the West is exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of
That movie is gorgeous.
That movie is gorgeous. Then we have 1965, The Sons of Katie Elder. That's still John Wayne being like, I'm John Wayne. People still want to see my movies more than your movies. And he's right. 1965, though, for the Doom, what's Clarion called? What's like the call of the grave? The Harbinger of Doom for John Wayne for a few dollars more comes out that same year. And, is still making lots of money. Let's see. I've got Django, which is a famous Italian spaghetti western, very violent and subversive. El Dorado, which is just John Wayne remaking Rio Bravo, hitting all the same beats with also just being like, they still like my stuff. I'm just going to make the exact same movie. People will come and pay for it.
Same cast. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Oh, man.
1966, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Obviously, for my money, the best of the Italian Western. But here's a ugly face in extreme close-up, with bad teeth. And then here's a beautiful wide shot of three guys, three mythological guys about to draw on each other.
A movie I do not even like.
I never want to watch it. I would say it's a masterpiece, and I might even say it's one of my favorite movies, but I haven't watched it for years and years because it's just like, it's so long and there's nothing to really hold on to besides these terrible people. Next I've got, and once again, this is just the list of the ones that Nathan's seen. We've got Hang 'em High, which is Clint Eastwood being super nasty. Then we've got Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968.
A movie I loved when I saw it. Haven't gone back to it.
It's pretty great. I think it's got
it's rapey.
Yeah, it's got a rape scene. Then we've got the John Wayne True Grit, which is him taking a novel that is interrogating the West a little bit and being like, can I win an Oscar for this? Can we just like do my same shtick, but you give me an Oscar and sort of, make it a victory lap for me? And it worked. And, I don't know. I don't know that I ever want to go back to that True Grit, but I guess I would have said I liked it before the Truer Grit came along.
I think that's the movie. I've never seen the John Wayne True Grit, but I think that's the one that has one of my favorite scenes that I've ever seen. I must have stumbled on it back in the days when I used to watch TV or something. But I think it's the LaBeef character maybe talking with John Vane.
With John Vane.
John Vane. Talking with John Vane, and he say, so he says so the innkeeper is this lady who's hanging around the private conversation. He says, ma'am, I find your presence to be a sweet distraction, as I imagine most men do, but my friend and I need to talk. Anyway, so she's flattered and she leaves. Anyway, it's just one of the best old movie moments of that kind.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's awesome.
It's awesome. There you go.
5 stars.
All right. The Wild Bunch. You guys ever seen The Wild Bunch?
Maybe.
The Wild Bunch is Sam Peckinpah, famous like Western director who was in the business of subverting the genre with The Wild Bunch was one of the most violent movies of its time. And it's still one of the most violent movies in terms of just like, he's the first guy to discover, like John Woo stole his style, and then all modern action stole its style from Peckinpah, and specifically The Wild Bunch, which is just the quick, rapidly edited, slow motion shots of bodies flailing, squibs going off, blood exploding, bodies getting filled with bullets, all done in this beautiful balletic kind of slow motion stuff. And so hugely violent, hugely kind of the Unforgiven problem. I don't know what Jake would think about this one. It is obviously an anti-Western, but it's also just like so over the top in its action scenes that it kind of becomes exciting in its own way, even though it's like they're using beings as body shields and stuff. It's like you can't help but sort of be swept up by the horror of it all. At least it's doing something. It's not just Unforgiven kind of, hey, look at me. Pooping over here. All right, more spaghetti westerns. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You guys Butch and Sundance fans?
No,
not really.
Yeah, it's lame, and it's another, but it is certainly another hip subversion. We're still not finding any like straight westerns here. Paint Your Wagon, the Clint Eastwood famously maligned musical, sucks. Rio Lobo, the third time that John Wayne and Howard Hawks remade Rio Bravo.
Yep.
And the worst. El Topo is a Jodorowsky movie that's horrible. Big Jake is John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. He shoots bad guys.
I've seen that one just a few times.
Never seen.
One of the movies that I hate the most is called McCabe and Mrs. Miller by Robert Altman, one of my least favorite filmmakers. A super anti-Western 70s kind of everything's grim and gritty, and everybody's a prostitute and they all have bad teeth and didn't the West suck kind of movie. Jeremiah Johnson, a dad movie classic. Robert Redford goes into the woods.
Never seen it.
Hate it.
What do you hate about it? I don't.
It's just pandering and silly. It attempts to be both charming and rollicking, and then to have this existentialist edge.
Yes.
And it does it all badly.
Yes.
Like the comedy is too broad and goofy. The
Robert Redford's your first clue, right?
Yeah.
I just hate that movie. I hate the filmmaking. It's shoddy. The whole thing is shoddy. I hate it.
Yeah, it's a bad movie. By Sidney Pollack, usually a dependable journeyman.
Yeah.
What a pretentious thing to say, Nathan. All right. So next we've got High Plains Drifter, Clint Eastwood being even more sour and mean and rapey and pretty sadistic movie. Next we've got Blazing Saddles.
Yep.
Little bit of a subversion, I'd say.
What makes you say that?
I don't know. It's just something about it feels like they're not quite approaching these tropes straight. Something.
I thought the black cowboy was the most realistic part of that movie.
Not a funny movie, actually.
For my money, it's no
Airplane.
It's no Airplane. For my Brooksometer, I'm up and down on.
You're about to say Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's no Young Frankenstein. Young Frankenstein's a much more fun evocation of the thing it's spoofing, and it's got Gene Wilder. I guess so does Blazing Saddles, but Blazing Saddles doesn't have enough Gene Wilder. Plus, I just like old Universal horror movies more than I like Westerns. So next we have The Life and Times of Grizzly Adams.
Nope.
He's a bear. That's like a crappy Disney movie. Speaking of crappy Disney movies, next we have The Apple Dumpling Gang.
I loved it as a kid.
I did too.
Never saw it.
Well, now, Jake, that's a movie about what would happen if Don Knotts and some other guy were in the Old West. And it turns out shenanigans would ensue.
Oh, man.
Next, we've got Outlaw Josie Wales, which I love. It does have like a dumb, gratuitous rape scene, which too many Clint Eastwood movies from that.
He likes those.
He likes those. He just does. He
really does.
He's just a mean and nasty man.
That's how Unforgiven starts. It's not exactly a rape scene, but it's a rape scene.
Yep.
He's already paid for the prostitute, but he's going to do what he wants with her, whether she likes it or not.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And that's why he's going to end up pulling the knife on her and cutting her face up. And that's how we're going to open that movie.
Let's see. Yeah. Well, yeah. So other than that, Outlaw Josie Wales is pretty great. And maybe some gratuitous violence, just like more violent than it needs to be. But next I've got another spaghetti western called Manaha, A Man Called Blade. Next I've got The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again. What happens in that one is the Apple Dumpling Gang rides again. Now we've got Pale Rider. This is the famous one where Clint Eastwood plays a preacher. Also has a gratuitous sex scene. Also a really fun movie besides that. Also a subversion of the genre. Next we've got Silverado, the famous movie where Larry Kasdan attempted to do for Westerns what Spielberg had done for old serials and Raiders of the Lost Ark. You guys ever seen that movie?
I've seen it. It was slightly fun.
Yeah, not as fun as you want it to be.
No, not as fun as you want it to be. Really silly.
Yes. Young Calvin Klein, Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, and Costner are all in that.
Costner, and you've got Jeff Goldblum and Danny Glover, and
sounds like a rip-roaring movie when
it
you
really
describe
does,
it, but it doesn't quite live up to that.
No.
I always like Scott Glenn. Yeah, he's cool as kind of the mysterious loner, kind of quiet trope guy.
Mm-hmm.
Three Amigos.
Loved it as a teenager.
What happens in that movie is Steve Martin and
Martin Short
and Chevy Chase do Western kind of tropes. And
What happens when you put those guys in the West?
yeah, well, shenanigans may or may not ensue. Next, we've got Dances with Wolves. Obviously, that's like the Indians are people too, and Kevin Costner's a liberal, and he's a person too. And next, we've got a dad movie classic that a lot of people from our generation remember fondly. I don't really like it, but Quigley Down Under. You remember this? Tom Selleck.
I do remember it.
I saw it a few years ago.
I don't care about it.
I don't care.
I didn't like it.
He got a fun Alan Rickman bad guy performance, but it's nothing you haven't seen him do before. And
Well, he doesn't have a script,
yes,
actually. He doesn't. Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah.
It has a couple of fun gunfights.
right. Yeah, it's got some cool action scenes, but it's very sort of left wing, like the Aboriginals are people too, which they are. But I just don't need a movie to spend too much time on that. City Slickers.
Oh yeah,
That's a dad movie classic.
very dad movie classic.
They complain they're doing the West, but then they're complaining about how to program the VCR. Quality stuff. You got
Having speeches about baseball and daddy issues and John Wayne movies, actually.
Yep. You do have Jack Palance winning an Oscar for playing Curly the Cowpoke. And that's fun. Next, we've got a Western classic that I know you guys love, An American Tale, Fievel Goes West.
Probably the best one we've mentioned so far.
Caterwaull. One of Jimmy Stewart's last performances. That came out that came out a year before Unforgiven, which we've already talked about. Tombstone. I guess you could kind of say that's a straight Western, but it's also
Only kind of.
yeah, by this point you can't really make a straight Western, because even to say we're doing the old tropes and not apologizing for them is kind of its own statement.
Yep.
So suddenly you're sideways to the whole conversation.
Right.
Again.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to just decide that you're going to portray Wyatt Earp as a good guy when we all know that actually blah, blah, blah is its own statement. Maverick, perfectly charming little
It was a charming little Mel Gibson movie.
Mel Gibson star
Loved
vehicle.
it as a kid, for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
I loved it.
I loved it too.
I don't know what I think about it now.
Probably just a stupid, boring movie that you would need to spend time with.
Yeah,
Probably.
Probably so.
City Slickers 2,
Yeah.
The Legend of Curly's
Legend of
Gold.
Curly's Gold.
I think I saw the first one.
I remember really liking this one as a kid, but I haven't caught up with it.
I liked it too. His twin brother shows up outside Billy Crystal's window, and it's, stupid. And the cow Norman is grown up and living in the house, and it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. They killed Jack Palance in the first movie, so
Right.
he
So
has
they have to have a twin brother. Billy Crystal inherits the hat.
Mhm.
The hat's got the missing corner of the map.
Right. I love that trope. There's John Woo did A Better Tomorrow, his first big heroic bloodshed movie, and Chow Yun Fat's character dies in that movie, but then they needed to make a sequel, so they do literally just have it's Chow Yun Fat's twin brother, who's also an awesome gangster gun hero guy.
That's really silly.
All right. The Quick and the Dead, the less said about that one, the better, in my opinion. That's the Sam Raimi, ridiculous Sharon Stone shoot 'em up.
Well, it's got Russell Crowe in it.
And a young Leo.
And a young Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's got Gene Hackman being his character from Unforgiven.
If you didn't have the charisma-free Sharon Stone playing the lead, you just slotted some cool dude in there, I think I might like it just fine, but it's pretty dumb.
It's a dumb movie. It has a lot of charismatic performances by charismatic actors, though.
Yeah, it's a fun
outside
movie
of
to
Sharon
like
Stone.
stumble across a clip on social media, like, oh, young Russell Crowe.
Hey, you remember that time Sam Raimi did the headshot where you could see through the skull for half a second?
Yeah, it's the most Sam Raimi movie. It's like my favorite Sam Raimi scene of all time is Doc Ock waking up in Spider-Man 2, and it's just this insane gonzo horror scene where the arms are like flying out of nowhere and the camera's following, the arms, and people are screaming and getting
pinned up against the
up the wall, and it's just, and the camera's flying everywhere, and it's just ridiculous, and it's so cartoony, and every scene of Quick and the Dead is like that. Next we've got Wild Wild West, Wiki Wild Wild West.
Never
Jim
saw.
West, Desperado,
Terrible movie.
Rough Rider. You don't want nada.
Next we've got Shanghai Noon, which I thoroughly enjoyed at the time.
Oh yeah,
You never saw Young Guns, huh?
Loved it.
Never saw Young Guns, no.
Or Lonesome Dove or any of those dumb.
I think as a kid, I didn't like the Brat Pack.
You just didn't have a mom that was.
Well, yeah, I wasn't actually a middle-aged woman, so I didn't need to see those movies.
I've read Lonesome Dove, and boy, that is an interesting deconstruction of the West, which is what it is.
I guess I'd like to see it. I don't know.
I don't think the miniseries.
You never saw The Shootist either.
No, The Shootist. We've skipped over The Shootist.
Never saw it.
I mean, there are a lot of John Wayne movies, like you said, like The Shootist, like The Cowboys, things where I'm like, I probably saw that. I think I saw that, but I'm not sure enough to put them on my letterbox diary. So
Did you ever see
The Cowboys? The Cowboys is probably your closest. I'd forgotten about that one.
just a straight.
Yeah.
So as a kid, I loved this movie.
Mr. Anderson.
The Man from Snowy River.
I have never seen The Man from Snowy River. Is that
It's like an
I don't
Australian
remember that.
Western, but I think it was it released by Disney? Let's see.
Yeah, you know
it
what?
was released by Disney. I loved it as a kid.
The Cowboys is as good as it gets when it comes to straight Western.
straight Western? But you
I'm
can't.
I thought you hated the Cowboys.
No. I love that movie.
Okay.
Why would I hate the Cowboys?
I don't know.
Maybe he hates the sports team, the Cowboys.
Okay, that makes
The
more
Dallas
sense.
Cowboys? Yeah.
Maybe Dick hates the
They-
Dallas Cowboys.
Cowboys is awesome. It's got a John Williams score. It's like the Western score of Western scores because of John Williams. It's awesome. It's, I don't know.
All right, cool.
He's he's got to get the cows,
Right?
but there's nobody to do it. So he's got to take all these boys. And then, the bad guy's going to come and try to steal the cows and get one of the boys, and he's going to die. And then they're going to get their revenge, get the cows back, and bring the cows in themselves. They all grow up.
All right.
The Man from Snowy River is Kirk Douglas in a dual role.
I think it might hold up. I don't know.
It's got a horse on the.
It's not.
Poster.
It's quite atypical. It's Australian for one. It's not. I don't know. It's like a coming of age kind of romance. Very different texture than an American Western.
Huh. Well, okay. I'll take it under advisement. Maybe I'll put it on my watch list.
Yeah.
Open Range. A lot of people like Open Range. I like Open Range.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
I
good.
don't remember that.
It's cheesy.
It's Costner, so that might be why you don't remember
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But it's Costner doing his like one round of his I'm now an old Western guy shtick.
I can't stand that guy.
But you've also got Duvall, so that helps
Okay, yeah.
a great deal.
Yeah.
And you've got a pretty cool shootout. Next is Hidalgo, which is horrible.
Never saw. I heard it was terrible and boring and
Viggo
stupid.
Mortensen's sort of paycheck movie that he took after Lord of the Rings that's just like terrible. Next is The Proposition, which is the closest thing to which is a brutal Australian movie, the closest thing to a Cormac McCarthy, the closest thing that anyone's gotten to Blood Meridian. Can't recommend it. That's certainly well done. Certainly a subversion. Next, we've got The Mask and The Legend of Zorro. Those two fine films.
Those are
Westerns?
First one's fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
Western.
Maybe,
It's
yeah,
really
maybe not.
Western.
No.
Well, weirdly, actually, my list only includes The Legend of Zorro, the way that Letterboxd is choosing them. Like I just said, select all Westerns. So obviously, The Legend of Zorro is terrible.
Movie
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, it's awful. But The Mask of Zorro rules.
Yeah, I had so much fun with that movie as a kid, and I've come back to it and shown it to my kids, and I love it. I did skip a little part of it once.
Yeah, it's got the famous bad part. But other than that,
Man,
you got Banderas, you got Hopkins.
Still worked, huh?
it still worked, and
Cool.
it's ridiculous that it works.
Yeah.
It's absolutely absurd that Anthony Hopkins is able to play Zorro.
Yes.
I mean,
But
Anthony Hopkins
he's
can just do
awesome.
anything.
He's just awesome. He can just do what he wants, and you don't care because he's Anthony Hopkins.
That run
and
of
then
Anthony
Banderas
Hopkins is great.
like right in the sweet spot of having the right level of goofy charm and charisma to really work, and to work opposite Catherine Zeta-Jones. It's pretty incredible. Pretty fun.
Yeah.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, a Welsh woman who I will forever think of as Spanish.
Yep.
Okay, next we've got 3:10 to Yuma, a sort of dour James Mangold, slight deconstruction.
Never
it's like
seen it.
James Mangold thinks he's doing the tropes, kind of like with Indiana Jones, but he's just so terrible and so dour that it's just a joyless slog.
It's a joyless slog. The action's no fun.
The villain is, much like in Indiana Jones, the villain is needlessly psychotic in a way that it's like, I can take a psycho villain, but that's not what I paid my ticket for. I want just like a classic fun villain. I don't want to like put up with how mean this guy is. Like it's no fun. No fun. Should have been fun. Russell Crowe, Christian Bale should be fun.
It's so self-hating.
Yeah.
Christian Bale's at his most. I'm a method actor. In this movie, I hate myself. I'll make sure you know it.
Yeah. Well, never seen you do that before or since.
No.
Christian. All right. Next we have The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Obviously a masterpiece. Ben, what do you love about that movie?
I can't think of another movie quite like it. I don't know it's hard to describe. It just doesn't feel, it feels like, wait, is this some kind of a documentary style of filmmaking or something? It's not really. It's just, boy, it takes its time. It's been a while. I don't seem to have the language, but I will say it's got some of the best performances I've ever seen from the likes of Brad Pitt, Casey Affleck, other really talented guys playing smaller roles. And it just feels real.
I think
it feels more real than any of the movies we've talked about, in the sense that it's like, these were people, this is how they would think, feel, and act and talk. And this is how random some of this stuff would seem. I don't know. I'm not doing a good job.
Right. I think it...
Help me sell it.
What I would say is it interrogates the myths, and that's all it does, but it doesn't hate the myths. It's just kind of like, this is how some random sort of bad dude becomes a legend, and the way the story gets told and what happens to the people that are in his orbit. And
and it's like, what would this guy actually be like? And you feel like the movie has a good answer to that question. Like, who would Jesse James actually be? And Brad Pitt performs him, and it's like, I believe in this guy. I mean, I not in the sense that I would want to follow him, but I believe in him becoming a legend and kind of not even knowing what to do with it, and then getting killed by this idiot coward, the coward Robert Ford,
right.
just like the title says. I just believe in all of it. I'm like, yeah, this totally makes sense. This is how people are. But it kind of like a Coen Brothers movie. It doesn't hate any of its characters. Actually, it has a lot of sympathy for Jesse James. Has a lot of sympathy for Robert Ford.
Yeah, while showing him for the sniveling.
Yeah.
Nobody snivels better
He's a
on screen
horrible
than
person.
Casey Affleck.
No, but it's got a sadness to it the whole time for everyone. I think.
I'm trying not to say the word elegiac because it's such a
I know
hack word, but it is.
But you could.
It is the word that describes it.
You've got Jeremy Renner in there. You've got Sam Rockwell, all doing great work in side roles. It's long and slow. It's not a movie for kids. Like you said earlier, way earlier in this podcast, it's crass in the dialogue. Sometimes at points like gross crass. But man, what an amazing movie. I don't know what else to say about it.
That's great. It's great.
It just is different. It's not the filmmaking, the editing style, everything sets it apart from anything you would ever expect in a Western.
Agreed. If you're an adult that wants to see an adult movie in the right sense of that word, then I think it's a good one. Yeah. Next is Rango, which I really don't like. Some people love that movie.
Oh, no.
I hated that movie.
I hated it.
It is just like Gore Verbinski kind of hates everybody and subverts everything. And
that is kind of his MO.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, when you go back to those Pirates movies and it's like, oh.
He hates me.
He hates pirate movies. Like, I don't know that he likes anything about this. Like,
no. Gore Verbinski is... Yeah.
He likes Johnny Depp doing weird Looney Tunes shtick, which, okay, so do I sometimes, but that does not a movie make.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, speaking of Verbinski, the next one is The Lone Ranger. Did you guys ever have the displeasure?
That movie is quite evil.
It is.
You're talking about the Johnny Depp one.
Yeah.
I actually did watch the 90s one or 80s or whenever that was.
Huh. I've never
seen the Johnny Depp one.
The Johnny Depp one is the worst, most depressing slog of an awful, terrible, morally bankrupt movie.
It's also quite depraved.
Yeah.
Depraved and well, keep going. We'll come back.
Well, the thing I wanted to say, we could go on and on about the depravity, but the climax of the movie rocks. Like there's this great action scene on a train where they do the William Tell overture, like they just do it. Like they just give you the thing that you actually paid your ticket for, the thing that you actually bought your ticket for. And it's awesome. And you're just like, I never see, sort of big budget CGI stuff done at this level. It's so good. It's the best of the kind of Looney Tunes aesthetic of the Pirates movies where one thing happens, the kind of Buster Keaton, one thing leads to another, to another.
Yeah.
Complications piling on top of each other and acrobatics required. It's great. And it's a scene that you can YouTube and just watch and you'll have a good time with it. But then you'll be tempted to watch the movie and you can't because it stinks.
Yeah, it stinks. It's incredibly gross. It's completely woke. It's all about how white people suck and they mistreated the Native Americans. That's really all that the movie is
Why
about.
is Johnny Depp playing Tonto?
That's the thing. Woke people can't like it either. Because
That's right.
Like the whole thing was just made for nobody. It
was made for, and I still remember. I think it's incredible. There's this scene where the bad guy, who is a cruel, sadistic, serial killing cannibal, basically,
right,
a white guy,
and
you see him reflected in metals, in like a spoon or something, as he eats the hearts of one of the side heroes. I'm serious. Like you, like you can't see quite enough, but what you see is like enough to scar your kids for life.
Right.
If they're the right age. You know what I'm saying? And it's like incredibly gross. It serves no purpose. But the whole movie is like that.
Well, that's the kind of thing I hate the most because Salman Rushdie has this great interview. I think it's for his masterclass, actually, of all things, where he says, like, as a writer, you must be clear about what kind of story you're telling from the very beginning. So it's not that you can't surprise people with a spaceship showing up, but if you surprise them with the genre being science fiction, and that's not why they grabbed the book, then they're going to be mad. And that's Verbinski being unfair in a really depraved way, where it's like nobody buys a ticket to this movie thinking they're going to see a cannibal serial killer. It's really unfair to kids. And, it's like, at least with a horror movie or with a movie with that aesthetic, like you see it and you kind of know what you're paying for. But when you pay for a fun, rousing shoot 'em up adventure movie, and then
if Jack Sparrow was in the Old West?
Right.
Still ridiculously dressed and having fun and shenanigans.
And those pirate movies kind of always skirt that line. One of them has like starts with like some random prisoner guy getting his eyes pecked out. And it's like you can just feel them cackling behind the camera, just like you didn't expect to see that. And I really find that kind of thing distasteful.
Did you ever see Gore Verbinski's opening salvo Mouse Hunt?
I did, and it's kind of similar.
It's really mean and nasty.
It promises like this sort of goofy slapstick live action cartoon, and then it's mean. Yeah,
it's incredibly like, yeah.
There is something extra mean about breaking the contract with the audience in the way that he likes to do, and it's really distasteful. At the very least, nobody who sees Silence of the Lambs is surprised that it's about a cannibal. Like, oh, right, I bought a ticket to see a cannibal movie. Okay, well, maybe.
I guess if that's not what I wanted, I shouldn't have.
Right, you have only yourself to blame.
Right,
but you buy a ticket to see The Lone Ranger and you get a cannibal movie. It's just mean. But The Revenant. Hate it. Hate it.
Saw it kind of. Enjoyed some of the filmmaking. I didn't actually see I don't know what happened. It was like it was playing in the background somewhere. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those movies.
I didn't ever care.
Yeah, so it's some of the filmmaking is incredible, but I had the misfortune of knowing the real story, which is this incredible true story of survival. And they turned it into like he had to watch them massacre the Indians, and then he's going to get revenge on Tom Hardy playing some kind of clownish Tom Hardy villain. And I suppose it all sort of works, has its own interior logic that works, but it's such a betrayal of of a fascinating real life story of this guy who was left for dead and had to like fight bears and stuff. Like you can read the real story of Hugh Glass, I think his name is, and it's insane. In this movie, it's like, we're going to cut out all the interesting stuff so that we can do a generic kind of revenge woke kind of, so really distasteful.
But we're going to make sure that Leo actually goes out and suffers on camera.
Well, yeah, you want
A
to talk
lot.
about that Daniel Day-Lewis syndrome where it's like, oh, I'm not watching a character, I'm watching acting with a capital A. This movie just has a lot of that sort of thing. You know, he eats some raw meat and then he vomits on screen, and apparently it's real, and I'm supposed to be impressed by the fact that Leo, a vegan, made himself eat some meat and then couldn't stomach it. I was like, dude, I'm pretty sure the character would have eaten meat and probably been able to stomach it. So, you know, you bringing your vegan sensibilities to this. And then anyway, I hate that movie. I feel about the vehemence about it that Jake feels about Unforgiven. It is just a mean, stupid deconstruction. We've got The Ballad of Buster Scruggs here. I think that's the newest Western I've seen. That is the Coen brothers at their most violent and cartoony. It's 4 different segments, maybe 5. And I'd say one of them is a masterpiece. One of them is an extended joke. Maybe 2 of them are sort of extended dark jokes, and 2 of them are masterpieces, and one of them is interesting.
I've never wanted to, I don't know.
I watched it. I don't remember much about it.
There's a story in there called The Gal Who Got Rattled that's absolutely heartbreaking and really well done and brutal. There's also one featuring Tim Blake Nelson from Oh Brother Where Art Thou playing the eponymous character Buster Scruggs that's just like insanely violent in a silly sort of shoot 'em up. We're making fun of the tropes of the Old West. So it's kind of them at their most subversive. It's not a great movie, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so that is the 104 Westerns that I have watched in my lifetime. I would say a grand total of maybe 2 or 3 of them could be counted as straight. Although even the Cowboys coming in the 70s, it's making its own sort of reverse sort of, we're doing a straight Western. We should still be able to do that. You know, it's that thing.
Yep.
So there's just like from the very beginning, from the 1920s, from the 19-teens, there's no Westerns that don't exist in some sort of metatextual reaction to the idea of the West, to the idea of America, to the idea of masculinity. I'd say, even with Roy Rogers stuff, you're still having to make a decision about this stuff. Like you can't, it is our myth, and it's impossible to not make some kind of judgment.
It's a judgment and a statement, and the whole point of the genre is to ask a question or make a judgment or a statement about who we are as a nation and as people.
Yeah,
Period.
I think
like that's just like it's intrinsic to the genre.
Yeah, Westerns are morality plays. There's no such thing as a Western. There's another way of saying what you just said. There's no such thing as a Western that's not asking big questions about civilization, about America, about who we are, about what a man is. Does a man make his own code? Does he accept other people's codes? Does he want to roam free? Does he want to be domesticated? And what about an American man? How does he feel about that kind of stuff? You have to answer those questions, and usually you're going to be asking them provocatively before you answer them.
The whole point of picking this genre is because you already want to ask a question, or you already want to answer a question.
So in that sense, it is a perfect mirror of the samurai genre, which is going to ask the Japanese version of a lot of those questions.
Well, that's why there's so much interplay between the two.
Right.
Because, that's exactly right. And the samurai typifies the Japanese man, the Japanese ideal, and the Japanese mythos in conversation with the dynasties and the takeover and all that, complicated history of Japan.
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, the Japanese can be both more proud of their heritage than we are and ask less questions sometimes, and they can be brutal in their interrogation. Some of those classics 50s samurai films are just like, everything about this was corrupt, everything was suicidal, and we hate it. And it's really interesting. I mean, Seven Samurai, if you compare the 2 famous remakes, Seven Samurai and Magnificent Seven, and then Yojimbo and Fistful of Dollars, Yojimbo and Fistful of Dollars, I'd say, are fairly similar because in both cases, the filmmakers are just kind of being cynical and having fun. That's not entirely true, but I think it's much more true than it is of Seven Samurai, which is very elegant and existential and sort of fatalistic and sad in its way. And then Magnificent Seven is like, heroes are cool, but sometimes they ask questions about whether they should be heroes. But basically, they're pretty cool. I mean, you will have, if those are your comparison points, you will have more respect for Japanese people's ability to sort of think about themselves than you will for ours. But I know that's not totally fair. That's not putting the best against the best. That's just putting one thing against one thing. And Akira Kurosawa, obviously one of the greatest filmmakers who ever lived. John Sturges, who directed Magnificent Seven. You probably didn't even know that was his name. I only know it because I just watched it. Okay. I don't know what we achieved today. We had some fun. We talked about some Westerns.
Yeah. I wrote down a bunch of movie recommendations.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to watch, I wanted to at the time, and then I've never quite had enough of a push to watch.
A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah, that
Seth MacFarlane movie.
Yeah, that's exactly it. How'd you know?
I just thought probably.
Yeah, nailed it.
No, but what were you actually going to say? Django Unchained, probably.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, the assassination of Jesse James by the
Yeah. So, okay.
Robert Ford.
Recommendations. If you haven't seen it, True Grit, obviously.
Yep.
Assassination of Jesse James. Again, it is vulgar. Like, just these characters talked in a vulgar way, and the movie replicates that.
Yep. And I'll go back to Rio Bravo maybe because of this.
Rio Bravo, super fun. I actually prefer the remake. El Dorado's got Robert Mitchum. Do you like Dean Martin better? Do you like Robert Mitchum better? I like Robert Mitchum better.
Yeah.
Playing the drunk guy. I highly recommend Destry Rides Again, just as a fun, classic Hollywood movie with Jimmy Stewart playing a lovable goofball who's secretly a BADASS. Wouldn't want to be vulgar like those characters in
Manny Shot Liberty Balance.
Manny Shot Liberty Balance, certainly. Yeah, those are two great Jimmy Stewart movies and two great interrogations of the West. I'm just
cool.
Somehow The Searchers did I say The Searchers?
It came up.
Okay, it did come up.
It may not have been on your list, but we talked about it.
Yeah,
it's just weird if Letterboxd didn't pull The Searchers. Didn't think it was a Western.
I don't think you mentioned Django Unchained either, but I know you've seen that, right?
Yes, I did maybe do a little bit of selective editing just to not confess certain things, but yes, I've seen that and don't watch it. I'll admit it now since Ben outed me. And especially don't watch The Hateful Eight.
Yep.
That's really gross. Much more gross than Django Unchained even. What are the other ones that people should watch? Is that it? Definitely watch those two Jimmy Stewart ones as far as classic Westerns. I mean, if you haven't seen the John Wayne, if you haven't seen The Searchers, then you've got some homework to do. You should
see The Searchers. It might feel like homework on a level, but it's a great movie.
If you haven't seen McClintock, you should watch it because it is insane. And you will have a lot of fun, even if you hate it, thinking about what were the morals and mores and sort of...
How did this movie come out and be a box office smash?
How did this happen? Yes. What were we? And am I glad that we were that? Or am I sad? I don't know. Am I offended that you might hate it, you might love it, you might hate it in the wrong way or hate it in the right way, you might love it in the wrong way or love it in the right way. I, of course, being the perfect arbiter of all those things. But you won't not have a reaction to it. Yeah, okay. So me and my wife had a lot of fun with Magnificent Seven. I think I would recommend that one if you haven't seen it. I mean, it is such a well-worn story for a reason. And I usually don't like that story, actually. I love Seven Samurai. I like the Magnificent Seven. Most of the time, like when Clone Wars is like, we're going to go to another village and we're going to band together and teach the people how to fight and stuff. I'm usually out on that kind of thing. I don't know why. It's just not my favorite. But I really liked Magnificent Seven. It did have a number of fun performances from stars, and it had that Charles Bronson scene, some stuff like that. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.